It's time for another Boy Green Daily. The people wanted her back, and she answered their call. Let's get it started. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
We're back, baby. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, live every morning at 7:30, and back by popular demand. I'm going to be honest. It's kind of like, in the 90s, there was moon shoes. I don't think we all thought it was going to be a thing, and then it was. Like, I'm not sure if I could compare Rivka to moon shoes, but nonetheless, we bring her on the show, and all the comments are, bring her back, bring her back, bring her back. And I'm like, okay, people, I'll bring her back. It's like a gun was to my head, but I did it pleasantly because she's fantastic. Rivka Boord of JetsXFactor.com. What's up, Rivka?
Nothing much. Thank you very much for having me back. I appreciate all the positive comments, and I'm sure that I wouldn't be here without some negative ones too. But if you don't, I'm just going to give it to you like I see it.
And I love that. You're a needle mover, so that is great, both positive and negative. I always say that because I've been in the radio business for the last decade plus, and when I came in as a wee little intern in the room, I was like, hey, I'll just kind of be in the middle. And the radio host said, absolutely not. That'd be the worst thing you could be. You either got to be loved or hated by everyone. And I went, okay. And then boom, 10 years later, 15 years later, whatever it is now, I'm getting old. I got all the silver whiskers in the beard now, so I'm getting up there in age. But the point is, Rivka, that people wanted you back. You're back. So, and we will get to some schedule predictions. It's game week. Look at the logos on top of the screen. We got a freaking game that I will be at. I can't wait. On Thursday, we'll be up in the press box for that one. That one is going to be juicy, and we'll give some interesting predictions. But let's just cut right to it, because I know we're going to have it for the poll of the day, which was kind of a wink at Jets X Factor of making sure I got Donovan Knight in the poll. But let's get right into it, Rivka. Your boy, you're part of your team, one of your teammates, Michael Nania, went on a recent, I don't know if he wanted to flex more, because I reread a new article he just posted when it went viral recently about the Cook Knight thing, and people either loving Michael or hating him. Again, Michael, way to take that advice. Very nice. So they're either loving or hating it. And then I was not very pleased by a particular comment that said, Michael said, I'm not sure, or he did say he was sure, one or the other. You'll be able to clean it up for me. But either I'm not sure if Dalvin Cook in 2023 is better than Donovan Knight, or like he is sure that it is. And I went, what the hell are we talking about? And I went a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So, Rivka, where do you stand in all this? Let's get another update on this.
So I think I did mention last time that I was a big Donovan Knight gal. And I think I also mentioned that I'm not a big Dalvin Cook gal.
You did. Yes.
So, Michael and I kind of came to that conclusion independently and then discussed it between each other. It wasn't a conclusion that we came to together. But I would say it sort of like him in that I wouldn't say it that, I can guarantee that Donovan Knight is going to be better than Dalvin Cook. I don't think anyone can say that. We have a very small sample size from Donovan Knight. But I think to say that I'm not confident that Dalvin Cook will be better than Donovan Knight, I think it's a fair statement, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Dalvin Cook, there's looking at the numbers and there's watching the naked eye on TV, and then there's watching the film. And the thing about running backs is more so than most other positions, you cannot tell at all on live TV how they really perform, because you have no clue what the hole is. They're not showing you the offensive line. You have no clue what they saw. So sometimes both you'll see like, the guy made an amazing play. Well, he had 50 yards of free reign ahead of him. This was Christian McCaffrey like half of last season. That's not a knock on Christian McCaffrey. He's a really good back, but it's just that, I mean, did the 49ers really have to give up that much draft capital for a guy who could run the same 50 yards that a bunch of other guys could have done? And sometimes it's the opposite. You think a guy got stuffed because the offensive line was terrible, when in reality they just missed a wide open hole or weren't patient enough or ran into the back of their offensive lineman because they didn't set up the back properly. They didn't set up the block properly. So when you watch Dalvin Cook's film from last year in particular, I mean, bad shoulder and all, he's still I'm not going to deny that his explosive plays, not everyone could have scored on those plays because he still has a lot of speed. But when it comes to grinding out yards, when it comes to a down in, down out basis, he is simply not a productive back. He does not break a lot of tackles. He misses lanes. He doesn't set up a lot of lanes on his own. There were times where he had very good run blocking and just got a couple of yards. There were even times in the open field where you'd think, hey, this guy's going to score. And he just scored. He got like 15, 20 yards, which on TV looks great. But when you look at the actual film, it's like, wait, why didn't he get more yards than that? And so I'm not denying his explosiveness. I just don't, my preference in a back has always been someone who can grind out those yards, who can have a higher success rate, meaning they get the 4 yards you need on first down. They get the 50% of the yards that you need on second down. They get the third down yardage. The more consistent back rather than the boomer bust back. And there is no more, pretty much in the league, there's no more boomer bust back than Dalvin Cook. Whereas Donovan Knight, what happened was you saw in the first 4 games, he looked good. And one of the reasons he looked good is because he broke a bunch of tackles. To me, a guy who can break tackles is showing an ability to create beyond his offensive line. Did we lose Boy Green there for a minute? Am I the only one here now? That's interesting. I guess we'll wait for Boy Green to come back on.
No, that's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. You just kind of like threw me back with your comments. It just kind of threw me out of the digital room. But no, proceed. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So Donovan Knight, the thing is, in his first few games, he was able to break those tackles. That shows an ability to outperform an offensive line and just your blocking. Now, I'm not saying his vision is perfect. It's not. I'm not saying he's a perfect running back. He obviously has 458 speed. He's not going to break your 50-yard run on a regular basis. But the thing is, just that ability to break tackles, and he has decent acceleration for a guy his size. I don't care what the testing stats showed. You see once he like kind of like a Chris Ivory type, once he gets his motor up a little bit, he has decent long speed. It's not obviously terrific, but I'd far prefer the guy who's going to grind out those yards. And as for the last few games, just watch the run blocking there. Like, I'm not saying he never missed a hole, but I would throw out the last 4 games of the season, not just for Knight, but for Michael Carter too. I'm not confident Carter's going to bounce back, but not because of the last few games. It's because of the first 7 games.
All right, here's going to be the criticism, and you can either say, well, screw you, Paul. I'm like, okay. So here's what I think. I think Donovan obviously has a much smaller sample size than Dalvin, right? So I believe that it's easier to say, hey, if you look at those first bunch of games for Donovan where he looks really good, and say, if you translate this to what Dalvin Cook got for open lanes and all these things, you drop him in, he's this because of broken tackles and things of that nature. But whoa. Don't count these games, though, because the offensive line's I just feel like it's very cherry picking, and then it's easier to do that for a guy who doesn't have as many reps as Dalvin because he's been out there a lot more. And I get it. Michael did a really good job of saying, despite the fact that there's this many carries, it's this many fumbles for this. So you could translate that down to correct that. But it's just easier for a guy that's been out there a lot more to have a lot more criticisms about it because there's a ton of more tape. In terms of Donovan, where he's got this, you can project. And Michael, again, going for the 19th best player in the 90-man roster is going to kill me one day. But, so he has that. So that's the one thing for me that's hard for me to get across because it feels like a lot of almost tunnel vision, so to speak, to try to force to see the picture. Again, I love that you clarified, and I think you said it last time too, but it's good for clarity's sake that you came up with your opinion or take, he came up with his take or whatever the film says, and then you guys came together and said, oh, wow, we both love Donovan Knight. Nice. So I love that happened as opposed to you both being somehow you guys influenced each other's takes. So that makes me feel better, but that's my criticism. What do you say to that?
So I definitely hear that, and I would say that that's valid more on the side of Knight, meaning we don't know what he's going to be. And that's why Michael and I are both saying I'm not confident that Cook is going to be better. We're not saying he's not going to be better. Saying I would not be so sure of that, considering what we've seen from Cook and the promise we saw from Knight, that it could be that Knight will come in and he'll stink. I mean, it could be that those last 4 games weren't a fluke at all. And, it could be that the Jets offensive line will stink and all the backs will stink. But I think that the criticisms of Cook are valid regardless of Donovan Knight. Even if they did not have Donovan Knight on the team, I still don't think I would be such a fan. And I'm not a big Michael Carter person, and I'm not a big Izzy Anakanda person right now. I'm not saying he's never going to be that good. I think he has some issues that need to be ironed out. But the thing is that I think Cook, the efficiency issues have been going on for a couple of years already. If you watch the run blocking, the tape backs up that he had decent run blocking in front of him. Whether you want to agree with PFF and say they were the 3rd best run blocking line, whether you want to agree with ESPN and say 18th is still roughly average. The Jets had one of the worst offensive lines in the league run blocking by any measure. So, trying to compare those two, Cook at the very least had decent run blocking in front of him. And he just didn't do, I would argue that he did less with it than he could have. And he certainly did not on a down-to-down basis do more. When you couple that with the fact that he fumbles a lot, he drops a lot of passes, and he doesn't bring anything in pass protection and never has. I mean, look, I guess you could convince me that for a few $1 million, why not? But I'm just not very high on Dalvin Cook.
That's fair enough. I just hope that when Donovan, we're going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame this weekend. I hope when he goes in that Rivka, you and Michael are enshrining him, that you guys induct him into the Hall of Fame. That would be beautiful.
To be fair, he played well in preseason last year.
He did. Yes.
So, and that's when a lot of Jet fans originally were pushing for him. And I actually remember Joe Blewett saying, like, come on, it's preseason. The guy just took a bunch of space and went wide open. And I wanted Knight to make the roster last year, but I didn't think he would be anything, special or anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he is either,
No,
but the one thing I have to say is also the argument that he's an undrafted free agent holds less water at this position than at virtually any other, because there are so many running backs that you see come out of nowhere and play well. I mean, again, Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick. And just because teams did not nab him off the practice squad. Again, a lot of teams have a bunch of journeyman running backs, so they didn't necessarily want to care to add him. But I would bet if the Jets did cut him this year, that some other team would take him.
Interesting. Okay. Rivka, a lot of pushback there on all my hoopla I throw around on Twitter sphere. I can respect it. She's probably speaking for the great people, because the great people are like, God, can this guy shut up already? And apparently no is the answer to that question, since I have a show every gosh darn day. But anyway, the point is, let's get to our poll of the day. Which Jets player has a better chance of being the MVP of the preseason opener? We love the David Clowneys of the world, Sharon Peak, all these guys throughout recent Jets history of guys that who knows what they will actually do, but for the Chris Trevler, of course, last year. So here are the two choices: Jason Brownlee, Donovan Knight. Now I'm going to be honest. Personally, I would have voted for Donovan Knight. I think you run a lot in preseason, particularly in the Hall of Fame game. So that's where my vote went. So go figure in all of this, how ironic that is. But who do you have in this one? And I guess the only caveat we have to put as we're recording this live here on the show, Brownlee on that spectacular catch we'll show you in a second. He fell on his shoulder, so that's kind of up in the air, but it didn't look too serious. But that's the only potential nugget to throw in there.
So I've loved what Brownlee has done. I think he's pretty clearly separated himself from the pack when it comes to the receiver job so far. And, if he could just put up, something in preseason, I think he will make, I do think they will carry a 6th receiver, which some people seem not to. And I think it will be Brownlee at this point. I wasn't sure before, because I felt like, Charles has been with the team and people like Jerome Cap. And so I thought it was a race between the 3 of them. But I think Brownlee has, just put on a very strong performance. And obviously Aaron Rodgers mentioned him in OTAs. So I in terms of who will perform better, my My biggest question is how is the football being thrown to him versus how is the run blocking? Because again,
right,
running backs are very dependent on their blocking, more so than most other position in terms of it's if there's no blocking in front of you, then there's only so much you can do. So Knight did a good job with backups in front of him last preseason. So I would tend to expect that to happen again, but who knows? Whereas, Brownlee, it's like, well, if Zach Wilson is playing the way he threw to Garrett Wilson last year, Garrett Wilson went silent for a bunch of games in the middle of the season. And I was like, oh, maybe we overhyped him after that Cleveland game. And then you see, Mike White come in and Wilson starting to have these games and everything again. And it's like, well, okay, maybe it was just the quarterback. so, that being said, like, again, if Zach Wilson can't hit him or Tim Boyle can't hit him, he's just not going to look that good, even if he personally does a good job. So, I'm equivocating here. I guess I'm doing exactly what you said, where I'm hedging my bets. But if I had to bet, I would still go with Knight, but I'm not saying it as an extreme thing. I can understand why so many people voted for Brownlee.
Yeah, I can too. Look at this. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Come on.
I do have to note that defensive back is Craig James over there?
Yeah, that's what it looks like, yeah.
But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, anyone who makes that kind of catch is going to draw some hype, and that's probably one of the main reasons that so many people voted for Brownlee.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely toot hop on the train there. No question about it. A couple of rapid fire things, and we'll get to our predictions and the schedule and everything. Joe Tippmann. Yeah, so he just but this is important because I know not everyone listens to the media questions. Rich Cimini asked Joe Tippmann, hey, has it been overwhelming at times? The mental blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, it has. And people are like, oh my God, he's overwhelmed. The worst pick of all time. And people are losing their crap. So again, sometimes we as media journalists, whatever, will like, hey, was that pretty crazy? Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then you just hear the answer and you're like, oh, look at him. But we kind of parroted. We like said, yeah, take the cracker and say what we just said back so we can use the quote. So I don't know if Rich was doing that in any kind of way, but Tippmann did admit that he was having some overwhelming things, and fans are not very happy on social media, Rivka, about that. I
mean, I can understand why, especially because, even though plenty of people thought they were going to take a center, John Michael Schmitz was pretty universally considered. I don't say 100%, but most people had John Michael Schmitz as their number one center. And not only did the Jets pass him up, but he went to the Giants. So it's kind of like if Tippmann doesn't start this year and JMS plays and makes the all rookie team, you're going to have some, again, obviously if the Jets do well as a team, no one's going to care too much, but I'll tell you what it is. The fact that Tippmann, is not going to start most likely doesn't it annoys me somewhat in that why do you use a second round pick in an all-in year on a player that might not, but maybe they didn't know that. I mean, maybe they thought he could learn it quicker, which, okay, I have questions about their scouting and things like that, but maybe they just didn't know that. The thing is, the bigger thing that concerns me is that he's the third center, especially knowing that Wes Schweitzer is a pretty bad center. Like, he's a decent guard, at least as a backup. As a center, you don't want it. I mean, those errant snaps that you saw were not unique. He had a number of them as a center. So the fact that they have Tippmann behind Schweitzer and that they're giving Schweitzer any serious kinds of reps is very concerning to me, even though there's track record with rookies. Again, Sauce Gardner was getting second team reps last year. So at first, I think I even wrote an article about this a week or two ago saying, don't worry about it. The Jets do this. But the language surrounding him and the fact that it's going longer and longer, and he's not even, like Saleh kind of said, like there's not even really much thought about him getting first team reps. That concerns me a bit because it's like, okay, how far behind the eight ball is he? Is this a second round developmental pick? Like I wasn't expecting that. Again, you watch his film from college. He's certainly not a perfect prospect, but he was an encouraging one. Like, maybe this guy can actually be better in pass pro than McGovern's been. And again, McGovern's an average player. I'm not knocking him per se, but I just thought he had higher end potential.
Second round picks are normally starters in any part of the second round. And then when it's a 43rd overall pick, I mean, there are high expectations of that. And yeah, Connor Hughes, if you guys missed it during the presser, I watch them all because I'm a freak. But Robert Saleh was asked by Connor Hughes, hey, he asked about the two centers getting the reps and then, hey, is Joe Tippmann going to work his way in there? And so I went, la, 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 Connor McGovern, Wes Schweitzer. And then Connor's like, excuse me, you didn't mention Joe Tippmann. It's like, yeah, he's got to earn first team reps, so again, to your point, it wasn't even in his mind. They're like, oh boy, again, it's still early. We're here in early August, so maybe there's time to flip the narrative here. But again, that was kind of interesting. Okay, real quick, random. If you have any, feel free to share them, Rivka. Some bold Jets Browns preseason opener takes. Ashton Davis, baby. He was the 1-for-1 in the Browns last year. He just has a thing against the Browns. I think he gets a couple of picks tomorrow. So let's throw Ashton in there. I think we're gonna get some of those home run hits from Izzy. So I love that. And then Michael Clemens. They just keep talking about him on the interior of getting those reps. That excites me greatly. He's a little lighter than what was reported. They said he was 290 plus. Another site had him at 297. I'm like, wow, look at all that weight added. Michael Clemens said before breakfast, he's hovering at 285. So not as dramatic as a weight increase as we thought, but nonetheless, I think he's going to have a great game too. Any quick Jets-Browns takes you want to
I have to say Clemens did not look 290. So yeah. I would tend to it makes more sense to me. I actually don't think Ashton Davis is going to play much. I think that I think we'll see a lot of Trey Dean. And I would have said JBC, Jarek Bernard Converse, because they drafted him. But again, we don't know what's with him.
Yeah, he's in the boot.
And when he's going to come off. So I think we'll see Dean. I actually, I'm starting to think that we could see Dean make the roster.
Really?
As safety. I don't know for sure. Because
whose job would he take?
A backup safety job. Meaning, you have
Ashton Davis?
I don't think so. I think he's not going to make the roster because they can save a couple million by releasing him.
That's true.
He is their punt protector, so there's a chance that if they don't have someone else, but I just don't think they're going to keep that many special teans only players.
Fair enough. You got Hardy, right?
Sense. So you already have Hardy. I could be wrong. Maybe they will keep Ashton Davis. I just they have a couple of now guys at safety, young guys. They have a guy Waters also. They have JBC. Yeah. Maybe I'm totally off base, but I'm starting to wonder about it.
Well, speaking of off base, I hope you're not about this. An AFC Championship game trip. Guys, by the way, you can see all the details down below. We're streaming live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter this morning. We're only on here for another minute or two, but down below is how you can enter our free prediction contest. If you get it right, if you nail it completely right, the order, then you just win the whole gosh darn contest. But if you get the wins right, we'll get into Rivka's here in just a second. You'll be entered a chance to win a free Jets jersey of your choice on me. Wink. So there you go. That's my gift from me to the fans. But Rivka, I took a little gander at what you got here. 11-6 AFC Championship game appearance against the Kansas City Chiefs. Muy caliente. Me likey. Rivka, wow. I'm going to be honest. I thought that you were going to be a little bit lower on this scale. I don't know. I didn't think you were going to say 0-17, but I was like, maybe in the 9-win range, maybe 10, but 11. I was like, okay, Rivka, we see you.
So I do have to say I surprised myself because I was fully prepared to predict 10-7, and you still may see a prediction like that from me before the season starts. But I think that, look, that was just the way it shook out for me. The one thing I said is I do think that they're going to lose to the Browns, unfortunately. I just, it's in Cleveland, and that's the one game that really frustrates me. But I have a bad feeling about it. Deshaun Watson,
sure.
Elijah Moore, the whole thing. I just have a bad feeling about it. But in terms of the AFC Championship game, for what it's worth, I do have to say, last year at the beginning of the season, I predicted 7-10. At the midway point, I predicted 11-6 in an AFC Championship game. So I just take what I say with a grain of salt.
Or hopefully this is the reverse. You're saying AFC Championship game now middle. No, 7-10, horrible. And then we go to the Super Bowl. I'm like, yes, Rivka, thank you. So
I don't. Again, things always surprise. I'm still trying to figure out who the surprise bad team is going to be. I just hope it's not going to be us.
Yeah, I'm just going to be honest. As I look at this schedule prediction, I hope you're horribly wrong about one thing. There is one game on the calendar I've already booked, the plane tickets, all that. The Cowboys. My father is a diehard Cowboys fan, and thankfully I've been able to give him the business. When the Jets-Cowboys game, Sam Darnold's return, thank God, I didn't have to see Luke Falk or God knows whoever they would have trotted out for that game. They win that one, and I give it to my dad and all the Cowboys fans. Suck it, baby! So, like, for this one to be in Dallas, how obnoxious will these Cowboys fans be if they beat us and then they go, look at that guy in the Aaron Rodgers jersey there, sucker. So I need you to immediately amend that. There is just, I just can't take it.
I have to say I went back and forth on that one. I really did because I think Dallas is a little overrated. One of the things about them is that their defense forced recovered 17 fumbles last year, which is a little insane, and that is very not repeatable. So I think that their defense is due for a significant amount of regression. They didn't upgrade their offense. I know they brought in one or two.
Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, they brought in Brandon Cooks, and I know he's good, but I just don't think he's going to be enough to move the needle for them above where they've been. I also think that the Cowboys have just been chronically overrated. So the one thing for me is that it's in Dallas, and
of course.
it just somehow in Dallas, and maybe I overrate traveling and everything and what being on the road means, especially since the Jets started off terrible at MetLife last year. So, who knows? But I just don't have a good feeling about it.
How many fumble recoveries did you say the Cowboys had last year?
16 or 17.
And what the hell? What the Jets have -4? Like, Jesus.
Yeah, defensively, I think LaMarcus Joyner had one against the Packers, and maybe defensively, certainly they the last 2 years they can't buy a fumble recovery, so that's considered mostly fluky statistically. So if you see a team that did very well defensively because they got a lot of turnovers, that's generally considered due for regression, and especially if they got a lot of fumble recoveries, because once the ball, even just forcing fumbles is sometimes fluky, and then recovering it is just once a ball's on the ground, it goes anywhere.
Yeah, oblong shape, all that sort of jazz. But okay, if they're due for regression, then what I'm hearing from you, Rivka, and some these headphones is then progression for the Jets. Like, hey, baby, if you couldn't buy a fumble, then all of a sudden it's going to be, you're going to pull the slot machine, football, fumbles for everybody everywhere in terms of the recovery. I freaking hope so.
So that's not how it works necessarily. Just because it's considered fluky as it could go either way. The one thing I do have to say is the main reason, I think I wrote 2 articles earlier this offseason, one saying why the Jets defense could regress, and the other one saying why it could actually be just as good. And in the one that I said that could be just as good, I said one of the reasons that it could be is because the Jets defense was really good despite forcing the fewest turnovers in football, or the second fewest in football. Very often you see these defenses that take a step back, it's because they forced a bunch of turnovers the year before and they couldn't replicate it. The fact that the Jets, the second half of the year, the last 6 games of the year, they had no turnovers forced at all. So, the fact that they didn't and they still managed to be that good says that, even if they can't first force more fumbles or get more turnovers, it's one of the reasons to believe that maybe they actually have a really good defense.
Well, Rivka, I just have to say, it's been an amazing last 20 hours or so. Talk about these superstar guests. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN NFL Insider. Josina Anderson, CBS Sports. And on top of them all, the cherry on top of that pie, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, baby. Wow. I mean, we got to flex on them. Thank
you. I appreciate you putting me in that category. I obviously don't have nearly the street cred. I really enjoyed those interviews, by the way.
Well, thank you.
Especially with Jeremy. I really, I enjoyed hearing from him, personally. Yeah, it was a good interview.
Yeah, I don't get to hear him in a lot of those kind of spheres. Obviously, the national shows and things, and same for a lot of these people. So it's kind of cool to kind of take him down to the dirty streets and say, hey, what's really going on, Jeremy? So that is fantastic. And Rivka, I enjoyed this one. So again, you were back by popular demand. The people, I even saw the comments, they're like, yes, we got what we wanted. Rivka's here. I'm like, she's here. So, okay, we'll have to do this again. We'll have to keep figuring it out.
I'll come on whenever you want me.
And I just have to say that you're true. I brought you on randomly in the afternoon before. I say, hey, you want to get up at the ass crack at dawn? You're like, hell yeah, I'm in. So next time, I guess I got to shoot for 2 a.m. or so. I got to keep the variety in the diet, I suppose. But man, you've been a trooper. So I appreciate you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on. Obviously, everyone can check out our stuff at Jets X Factor. We put out a lot of analytics and film stuff, so it's not just your traditional things. If you want to know a little bit behind the scenes what's going on, check it out. Even just to disagree with us constantly, feel free. You're not going to see my bold takes on Twitter for the most part, but you will see them on Jets X Factor in my articles.
Yeah, there you go. And Rivka will always come rushing to defend the honor of Michael Nania, which we all appreciate and respect. That's the first
only
thing.
Only if I agree with him.
Oh, okay. So not just for default, not just like so you're perfectly willing to push him to the wolves if necessary. Sorry, pal, you did it yourself.
Well, I'll let him defend himself. But
excellent.
But in this case, I happen to agree with him, so I can defend his position.
I love that. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in for Boy Green Daily. We'll be back tomorrow morning. And I'm doing this show, and then I'm heading on the road to Canton, Ohio, baby.
Okay,
so can't
enjoy.
wait for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll do. Oh, that is a bucket list item. It will be juicy. So we'll be live there from Thursday through Sunday. So hopefully you guys could check it out. Rivka, thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
All right, thanks everybody. See you tomorrow.